Hey, this is Joe Lamb, writer-director of The Fetus, and you're listening to the Don't Go Out There podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast. We appreciate y'all tuning in. We are super excited to be interviewing Mr. Joe Lamb, the director and writer of the soon-to-be-released indie horror film, The Fetus. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, Nico. Appreciate it.
Of course, we appreciate your time.
And Joe, we like to start all of our interviews by asking, what is it that got you into this business? What inspired Joe Lamb to be a filmmaker?
Yeah, this goes back to when I was 16, and I had an English teacher in class. He showed all of us this movie called Citizen Kane.
Oh, yeah.
Old black and white film about this newspaper mogul. And I just thought back then movies just happened. Like, I didn't know there was like a thought or artistic skill to it. And I mean, this thing just broke so many rules of filmmaking that I started to see behind the movie as a result of that. And I was like, wow. And from there, I just started like making video projects for some of my class assignments, which didn't require video. So that's how I got started, and just made some short films during high school as well.
I just watched Citizen Kane about a month ago, and man, you're right. That's a classic movie. It's inspiring.
Before we get into talking about The Fetus, you told me at MegaCon how much you like films like The Fly, The Exorcist, The Thing, amongst other classics, and you said the newly released The Substance was your favorite of 2024. Were any of those films an inspiration to writing of The Fetus?
Honestly, when I wrote The Fetus, I watched or rewatched about 25 horror films just to get myself into the mood. Yeah, because I'd never done a horror before, to be honest. All my films have been like romance, comedy, action thriller.
Right.
And so I was just like, okay, I need to just figure out what works, what I want to contribute to this genre. But the two movies really that stuck out were especially The Thing, which I've seen so many times, and then Nightmare on Elm Street. Mainly because you've got these practical effects that they have a certain look to it, but I just believe it. I buy into it. Even though I know it's not real, I know it's practical, but I'm so absorbed in the story that I'm just caught up that when the movie's over, I'm like, oh man, I went through this roller coaster ride. And the stories are just wild as well. It's so outlandish, but at the same time, the actors, the characters, they're believing in what they're doing so much.
Right.
That just overcomes, whatever issues there are in the story, or just weird wackiness that happens in it.
Absolutely. Speaking of that, got a good transition into The Fetus. So tell us a little bit about, tell us, our audience and us, a little bit about the film. What should we expect, going into it?
Well, we actually have, we're starting to get some reviews from some horror publications. Horror Buzz came to our LA premiere. They actually called it zany, gory, bloody. So they had a good old time. So
there you go.
Yeah, what to expect is something that I always strive for: a strong story with characters that you really care about. Not the type of characters that you watch a movie, you can feel like you can swap them out with anybody. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to have these characters with specific trauma, specific issues, and you were going to see if they were going to overcome them and grow as a result, or succumb to those issues.
Right.
And besides that, we've got some very topical issues of the pro-choice, pro-life debate. And then, of course, the practicals. I was adamant saying we have to have practicals in this.
Yeah.
And that was a must. So everything that you see in there is practicals. And there may be, some slight enhancements with VFX here and there, things that were just impossible to achieve, like in a basement. There's just certain things I'm not going to get into it because I would start to spoil some of it. But I wanted the realism. I wanted that feel, that tactile feel that I've been missing in so many movies nowadays. Like, for example, when they remade The Thing, this was the third remake. They actually had practicals for it, but then they replaced it with CGI. And I had a lot of time just watching it. I couldn't even sit through it, I'll be honest. No shade to the filmmakers, but it's just, that's it. Practicals have a certain effect on me.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
CGI has a certain effect on me.
Yep. That was one of my biggest issues with Gladiator 2 was the CG just looked so out of place. So I know what you're talking about.
Absolutely. So moving on with that, you have some horror royalty in this, headliners on the poster of this movie. Let's talk about the veteran of the two first, Mr. Bill Moseley. How was it working with him, and what made him perfect for this film?
Well, he was my top 3 choice. And I knew that he could bring a certain sensibility to this role with the things that he's done in the past, where he's not afraid to put himself out there and push himself to a certain degree while still maintaining believability for the role. And he plays this role very well, especially pulling off the father of Alessa, who's played by Lauren Rivera. And I saw that relationship, solidify right in the beginning, which you have to have that to be on board with the characters, to care about the characters and the outcome. Because otherwise, to me, you can have all the craziness that you want, but if you're not with these characters, you don't care about them, you don't care if they stay together, they break up or whatnot.
Right.
It doesn't really matter then, So, yeah, but he was such a professional. He took on the character as his own, because the first day of shooting, we had a bunch of lines for him standing off at this porch with a shotgun. And he goes, Joe, why don't I just throw all this out and just say this instead?
Nice.
It was like 5 lines he threw out, and he wanted to settle with one. And I'm the type of director, which I'm not like some who are like, no, you got to say my lines the way I've written them. I took that as, okay, he is taking ownership of this character. I am passing this character fully over to Bill right now. And that to me is one of the greatest things that can happen, because it's a collaboration, filmmaking.
Right.
And for him to take it on fully and say that to me, I was like, great, it is yours. You do it.
Well, I was definitely sold on the movie when I saw his name attached, because Otis, his character in the Firefighter trilogy, one of my favorite characters ever, so I'm excited for that. But let's also talk about your present-day horror icon in the film, one of the most popular new final girls, Lauren Rivera. How was it working with her?
Oh, it's like anytime I just gave her, the opportunity to act in the scene, I mean, it's just, boom, it's full cylinders. There is no ramping up to get into the character. It is just there in the first take. Yeah, we do more takes, second, third, maybe fourth or fifth, but literally I could take any take 1 through 5 and it would work, because she was just spot on, so dialed in to the character that it was phenomenal. And even her audition performance, she beat out 7,500 actresses for this role.
Wow.
And
wow.
I tell people, like, literally, I could take her audition self-tape performance, cut it into the movie, because it is so good. It is that emotional that you probably wouldn't even realize that the background is just a plain white background.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Impressive.
So, Joe, also I want to ask, I'm not sure if you heard what we were talking about before we started recording, but I'm pretty proud of myself. I finished my first script. And I just want to know, what advice, if any, would you give any up-and-coming aspiring writers and directors trying their best to make it in, such a difficult business of filmmaking?
I always say 2 things. One, you take a course that I took, which completely transformed my storytelling ability. I wrote for 20 years screenplays going nowhere, pitching to 200 producers or more, and nothing was happening. And I would write short films, then I would make them. I did a dozen short films. Nothing really happened until my 12th short film. And it was because I took a course by a guy named Corey Mandel, and he wrote for the studios for 12 years, 11 or 12 years. And he doesn't have the best IMDb credit on there, but I took a chance, took his course, and he pulled back the curtain in terms of storytelling and screenwriting and what works in the industry and what gets people to turn the page of your screenplay. So once I took his course, it was 3 courses, and you can go to his website, it's corymandel.net. It changed my world instantly. Wow. Because I just got it. And then the second thing is to have people read your work. Test, test, test. Always test. I have friends that will make films. They won't show anybody. They keep under lock and key. It's maybe like 3 people get to see it. The director, the editor, maybe the producer. And then they just suddenly just throw it out into the world. And I look at it and I'm like, oh man, if you would have shown people, done test audiences, because you could have fixed that. And it would completely improve your story. And so that's what I recommend. Those 2 things.
That's great advice.
Test.
That's a great advice because I've written stuff before, but this is the first one. I mean, it's 102, 103 pages. And this is the first one I've, seen through to completion that many pages. And I'm sensitive about my stuff. So I'm like, I don't know who I want to read it and everything. So that's great advice though.
Yeah. And Dustin, the more you get people to read it, the more you'll get used to it. The criticisms, the feedback. And I've been through all that. Yeah. Now I get to the point where I'm just like, it's nothing to me. People criticize and,
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
absolutely. Joe, we like to ask all of our guests that do conventions. You've done a few conventions. I see you're doing some more in the next coming weeks. Do you have any memorable experiences you'd like to share? They can be crazy, wild, sentimental. Maybe you got starstruck. Maybe it's just you enjoy chatting with horror fans. You got any memorable experiences you'd like to share?
I think we had this girl dressed as the pale girl from Terrifier. Oh my God. She came around because she went to our screening in Vegas. This is Days of the Dead Vegas. We had a screening there. And she looked, normal. And the next day we see her at Days of the Dead and she's all, dressed up in cosplay. And we have this little umbilical cord that we actually used in the film that had blood in it for a scene. There was no blood in it this time. She wanted to play with this, so we gave it to her. She went around the entire Days of the Dead convention, attached it down below under her skirt, and she was just pulling this thing up.
Jesus.
Pulling it up here and just messing with people, wrapping it around people's necks. And it was wild. She took so many photos. And in the end, we gave it to her. We're like, you know what? You love it that much, take it. You deserve it. Yeah, but that was wild. I got video of that. So if you go to our Facebook or Instagram, you could find it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That is. Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining us. The Fetus stars Lauren Levera and Bill Moseley. It releases March 7th. Be sure to check your theaters. Go support indie horror films. Absolutely, for sure, especially nowadays. Joe, are there any final thoughts you'd like to kind of share before we let you go? I mean, also, would you like to share your social medias and what else you got in the future?
Yeah, I'll just say, Nico, Dustin, Brian, thank you guys so much for having me on because, we're not a big studio. We don't have big marketing dollars behind us.
Right.
We are independent cinema. I made the movie the way I wanted to make the movie. I did it for horror fans. So for you guys to come and help promote in this way, interviewing me and other filmmakers, I mean, it's huge. I seriously mean that. What you guys do, keep it up, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure's all
last
ours.
thing I'll just share is we do have pre-sale tickets going on. You can go to thefetusmovie.com and there's a bunch of bonus gifts. There's a giveaway that's involved that you can get for the same price as a movie ticket. We are offering 3 pretty nice bonus gifts that are physical products, digital products, and even a all expense paid free trip to the actual location where we filmed The Fetus. So just go to thefetusmovie.com.
Awesome.
Nice.